Howdy, everyone. Welcome to Narrative Dissonance here on Unsafe Space. This is a show we do every Monday at 2 p.m. I almost didn't know what day we did the show or what day it was. Every Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific, in which we question mainstream narratives. We have a panel of guests on to help us talk about how we're being lied to, how we're being misled, all that kind of stuff. I am your host, Carter Laren. Please, you can go to unsafespace.com if you'd like to support us. You can also watch all of our live streams there. If you don't want to be on another site, you can also find us on Utreon, Rumble, Odyssey. Unfortunately, still here on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at _unsafespace. And I don't know, like, subscribe, share, do all that stuff. Sharing content really helps. YouTube does not like us, so they do like to suppress our videos. So you're probably not going to see us in your feed, even if you're subscribed, which you should still do. So go ahead and share our content with other people if you can. If you have the cojones to share this content with other people, go ahead and do that. Our next book club is August 14th, and it is, here it is. Yeah. This book, Fossil Future by Alex Epstein. It's called Fossil Future, Why Global Human Flourishing Requires More Oil, Coal, and Natural Gas, Not Less. So nothing controversial about this book. Plenty of time. It looks big, but I think it's a relatively easy read. So you got plenty of time to get on that by August 14th. Let's see. I don't think, actually, Beverly can jump in if I'm wrong. I don't think we have a 451 degrees tomorrow. I don't know if we have a Rebel Civics on Wednesday, but we do have Dangerous Thoughts on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, and then Token Minority Report at 4 p.m. on Thursday. I think that's what our schedule is this week. So without further ado, let's get started. First, please welcome Adam Coleman. Adam's the author of Black Victim to Black Victor. Actually, wait, I think I have that. I do. Here it is. Black Victim to Black Victor, identifying the ideologies, behavioral patterns, and cultural norms that encourage a victimhood complex. He's an op-ed writer, public speaker, and founder of Wrong Speak Publishing. You can follow him on Twitter at wrong_speak. Adam, welcome.
Hey. A little bit of a delay. How you doing?
Thanks for joining.
My pleasure.
I just have a quick question, Adam.
Yes.
Did this make it to Ibram X. Kendi's must-read list yet?
More like the must burn.
Oh, he has a burn list. Of course.
Yeah, he has. I'm sure he has a burn list. No, and if it is on the burn list, I'd be proud, actually.
You'd be proud. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And our second panelist today is Juliet. I never know whether I should say your last name, Juliet, so I'm going to leave it out right now, and you can tell us later. You may know her from her work on Gab, where she exposes what Yuri Bezmenov called ideological subversion in Western civilization, or you may know her from her frequent appearances on the Independence Gang podcast, or here, you can follow her on Gab at TruthSeeker8487. Nice and easy to remember. Juliet, welcome.
Hello.
You're so good at picking usernames. I must say.
I've had to go through quite a few of them, not gonna lie.
Oh, do you get banned a lot?
Sometimes. Yeah.
No.
I say the things you're not allowed to say, I guess.
Oh, like wrong speaking.
Yeah.
My daughter just she's going into 8th grade, and she just was given her summer reading list. Like, she had to choose books from her list, and most of them she'd read already. But one of them she hadn't read was 1984.
Nice.
And she was like, should I read this? And they said, oh, it's very advanced. It's very difficult for this age group. And I was like, I don't think it's that hard. So go ahead. And she's liking it so far, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. That book gave me nightmares. The rats gave me nightmares. Like, 'cause I don't remember how old I was when I read it, but like the rats in the cage thing. Oh man. All right. Wrong speak made me think of that. All right. So welcome to both of you. Maybe Adam, will start with you. What do you think is the most important story about which mainstream media has been misleading us this past week, if you had to say?
I don't know about misleading, but it's kind of like a blip. I would say Biden saying that we're going to stay in war, or we're going to be involved in the conflict in Ukraine as long as possible. Like, I'm like,
he said that as long as possible. I missed this.
Yeah. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but basically, like, until we win, like, that's basically it. And I'm like,
okay,
that I think that should be something that we talk a little bit more about, that we're going to be in this maybe possibly endless conflict that happens in Ukraine, or the fact that there seems to be no advocacy for peace. I remember, and I actually had the article up not too long ago, Boris Johnson basically saying, like, don't negotiate any peace deals. And I'm just like, why would they say that? Oh, because they want more. They want more conflict.
Yeah, well, I don't think you understand, Adam. You can't sell missiles if you don't have a war. I don't do.
That's
like,
right.
What's so hard about that?
I keep forgetting about that. Yeah, exactly.
Crystal City will go bankrupt if we don't have war. We need war. And, supporting Nazis in Ukraine against a dictator in Russia is a great kind of thing, because both sides are horrible and you can just kind of do it forever.
Yeah, I mean, is he really a dictator? I mean, he only just got rid of everybody who disagrees with him within the government.
He only
I don't know.
throws reporters in jail. Other than that, it's very free in Russia.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the one thing that sticks out to me. I actually wanted to write something about it soon, but it sticks out to me, like, to what end are we going to take this on? I have so many questions as far as, why is it our problem? Like, there is a humanitarian aspect to it, and I understand, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. But at the same time, like, it's like Ukraine has a conflict. What's the United States going to do? And I'm thinking, what the fuck should we do? Like, why is it our issue? Why? At least we don't necessarily have boots on the ground, but it's almost as bad that we're just funneling money to one of the most corrupt countries in Europe, or if not the most corrupt countries in Europe, and with no oversight as well. Admittingly, no oversight as to where this money goes, and just blanket sending weapons. So I don't want to take too much time, but yeah, that's the one thing that I would say.
I think you bring up good points. I mean, we haven't talked about Ukraine in a while on this show because, frankly, it kind of has fallen into the background, which I think is the intent, right?
Yeah.
We were supposed to get all jacked up about it early on so we could be rah, 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 and put Ukraine flags in our Twitter profiles and agree to spend billions of dollars and send it to Ukraine. But, more recently, since it's been approved, they just kind of want it to, the war machine can kind of operate without our involvement and notice for a while. And so they don't need to keep throwing it. Plus, the January 6th escapades are going on. So, or have been for a while. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it is a good question. Why is it in our interest? And from what I hear from the hawkish side, and this includes the Republicans like Bill Kristol, but also, the leftists. Well, I won't say the leftists, whatever, the other side who are supporting it. They make this argument that Putin is so horrible and it's unjust and we have to stop him and yada, yada, yada. And, it's hard to argue that Putin's not bad. Sure. But meanwhile, we've been supporting the death of people in Yemen for a while and no one seems to care, right? It's certainly, we certainly picked the wars that we want to get involved in. And we were lied to about it. There was this, like, it's not going to be a Vietnam, it's not going to be a quagmire, blah, blah, blah. And now it's kind of fallen into the background, and maybe we'll be at war for 10 years and Ukraine supporting it. And it will just be, and it not having boots on the ground actually means that it's not our lives that are being risked. We're just like funding the death of Ukrainians and Russians so they can keep, we're funding the meat grinder for people who aren't even us.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about that. I was thinking, actually, I think earlier today about this, like the idea of good guys and bad guys in foreign policy. I just kind of come to the conclusion that there's no such thing as any good guy in foreign policy, It's just a matter of perspective as far as who's in what interest to do what. You can make an argument that the United States is the bad guy in many situations, and maybe some situations we're the good guy. But I think that also leaves the room to say that maybe Putin isn't always the bad guy. Maybe Putin is just acting within his interests, and him being a good guy in Russia makes him a bad guy for us. Like, it's just all about perspective, but I don't think there's no angel on the foreign policy world, and especially when it talks of war and conflict. It's rare. And I've never saw this entire conflict as, the poor innocent Ukraine, the people, yeah, but not the government.
Sure.
Yeah,
people have a hard time separating governments from the people, right? I mean, our government, I mean, the three of us, I'm going to go out on a limb and say things happen in Washington that the three of us might not want to represent our views.
Yes, exactly.
On occasion, yeah.
And I mean, and if someone like Putin is a dictator, as they're claiming, right, or whatever, if he is a strong man, well, then all the more so for the Russians who are caught in the middle of this, who don't really have a say. And of course, I feel bad for the Ukrainians. I mean, who wouldn't feel bad for the Ukrainians? But I think you're right. The other thing is you're not allowed to. The nuance that you're bringing up is kind of prohibited from mainstream discussions, because if you try and bring up a nuance like, well, let's look at this from Putin's perspective, you get shut down immediately. How dare you? Putin is a crazy man, and you can't look at anything from his perspective, and he's evil, and you must be on the side of Satan if you want to look at it from Putin's perspective. It's like, well, we can still, even if that's all true, it's good to understand his perspective. Can we have that conversation? And typically the answer is no. But there's a lot of reasons why. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you off. It's starting to change. NPR finally put out an article saying, hey, maybe Zelensky is corrupt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they just put it out. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but they're basically questioning the level of corruption within Ukraine, and they're starting to turn. So to me,
I'm going to find this and share it here.
Keep going. I just thought it was interesting because it reminds me of COVID, where all of us were questioning everything for months and months and months. And then finally one day someone says, hey, maybe lockdowns aren't good. And then it's just the turn. It was within a week, everybody just shifted. The mainstream media was like, yeah, I think we should, I don't think the lockdowns are working. It's we've been screaming this for months. And then they say the same exact thing that we've been saying for months as to why they're not effective. So it's so strange to me. As soon as there's some sort of impetus for it. And so for COVID, it was actually it was basically when Joe Biden got elected. When it became official, it was a week later.
I'm sure that's a coincidence, Adam.
It's just coincidence. So, I'm wondering, I'm still trying to figure out what's the impetus of this. Why all of a sudden are they pointing out that he's corrupt during this conflict? And I wonder if it's coming to a point where it's Ukraine's not going to win this or going to come anywhere close to winning this without foreign involvement, boots in the ground. And I always thought it's a pipe dream to think that you could just throw billions of dollars at a force and hope that they do something. It kind of reminds me of Afghanistan, that video where they have all these military officials in there and they can't teach them how to do jumping jacks. No matter how much money and time and effort, you can't even get them coordinated physically. And yet you expect these people to withstand fighting and battling people. It reminds me of something like that. And we're just throwing money at a problem. And they were never going to win.
No.
I think you're asking a really good question, right? Because with COVID, I think it's maybe obvious. I remember in early 2020, the two things I was getting, at least two things that I would get pushback from, and anyone who said this is not just, I'm not unique, but anyone who said these things hey, there's a huge economic cost to these lockdowns. It's going to destroy small businesses all across America. This is really, really bad. Can't have that discussion because suddenly you were, selling out grandma. How could you possibly worry about money when grandma's going to die, you cold-hearted capitalist pig, right? How dare you have that discussion? So you couldn't say that. And you also couldn't say, hey, maybe keeping kids masked up is not healthy for them. Like maybe this paranoid kind of mask stuff and all this, the school closures is maybe not good for children's psychology. Maybe there's some negative effects of this. Maybe the masks aren't as effective as, because what we're being told is they're perfectly effective and awesome in every way. And maybe that's not a super scientific statement. So maybe there's nuance there. No, you couldn't talk about any of that. And you're right. Shortly after Biden was elected, suddenly, gee, you know what, everyone, the lockdowns there might be an economic impact that's, and of course, they would, hey, it's disproportionately hurting, this segment or that. It's like, yeah, of course it is. And now you saw also articles like, hey, the kids who grew up masked, it seems like there's some psychological repercussions here that, who'd have known? We could never have known, but suddenly we found out. And, and now they're on to this Ukraine thing. Tell me, what do you think? It's because they think the war is going to end badly, that it's going to go on forever? What's your theory about why they're suddenly throwing Zelensky under the bus?
Unless they want to blame him for not making advancements that they think should be made. I don't know. I almost feel like I haven't fully thought this all the way through. So I'm kind of like thinking on the fly, but they put him up as like this hero figure. But I think a lot of times when they do that in a very short period of time, it's to make them a tragic hero figure, right? So they're going to somehow find some way of saying that he's corrupt, he needs to be removed violently or through political means. I have no idea, but I think it's starting to pivot to show that Zelensky, who more than likely is corrupt. There's some, I was highly questioning the character of Zelensky and everything about like his aura, that everybody started, including people on the right, who started falling in love with Zelensky because basically he wore fatigues. That was basically it.
Right. He wore fatigues and he was a regular kind of guy. And yeah.
Except he wasn't a regular kind of guy. He was a Hollywood guy, or in their terms, Hollywood kind of guy. Like he was famous and relatively wealthy. But the image of having the president fighting in arms with the people for a photo op, basically. And then after that, he's all over the place, meeting celebrities. And I thought to myself, the audacity for him to fly all the way to America and demand Congress give him money. I was like, I don't think I've ever seen that before. I don't think I've ever seen a foreign leader come in and basically demand them to give him money or else everybody's going to die. And then they're like, we got to do everything possible to give him money now. And I was like, none of this makes any sense. Also, you mentioned something before about giving them money now that they have the money. The one thing I noticed is there was outrage over I think it was $40 billion. It was like a $40 billion package that went out. That had a lot of headlines and people focused on it. But there wasn't a lot of headlines once they gave out $10 billion. They're like, oh, we're going to give another $10 billion for arms. Right. Like, because that's not as bad as the $40 billion. It's $10 billion.
Right. They set your expectation and then if they opened with 10, would have all been pissed, but they opened with 40 and then only 10. Yeah, that's a win. That's how conservatives have been doing politics for my entire life, right? That the left opens with pure communism and then they back off to like 25% of communism, and conservatives are like, yeah, we won. Like, well, that's not really a win, buddy.
That's one thing I noticed.
You're reminding me. Sorry, go ahead, Juliet.
Okay, I was just gonna add on to the whole, like, there's this weird Hollywood aspect to this. Didn't he call into the Oscars or something? Like, I don't remember what award show it was.
I don't watch the award shows. Did he?
He did like he called in like a Zoom call and they played it and for all the celebrities. Like, are you asking for donations from them? I don't understand. It was like very propaganda, and then Bono playing concert in the subway in Ukraine and all these foreign
When Bono's
leaders.
involved, something's
Right.
wrong.
And then we're sending heads of state to go visit him in an active war zone. Like, just none of that adds up. Whenever do we send really important political figures into an active war zone to shake hands with somebody for a photo op?
Yeah.
Like,
And
just
Ben
so
Stiller.
much. Where are the embedded press with combat troops or anything? They're always
That's a good question. I don't see a lot of
a
embedded
balcony at night with the city behind them talking. Nothing. I haven't seen a single video of a firefight. It's kind of
that's
odd.
that's a really good point.
Actually,
it's happening in cities, right? Like, there should be cell phone footage.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We're being told that's what's going on. Yeah.
Something's fishy.
Something's weird. No, actually, I have an answer for that. Where's the media when it comes to the battling? Malcolm Nance. He put on the fatigues and held the gun, and he went into the woods and fought alongside the Ukrainians. That's where our media was. And you know what's so funny? It's so funny how tribalized certain people are, because you got to look at that and say, like, this is complete bull. Like, are people buying this? And then you read through the timeline, you're like, yeah, fight the good fight. Like, just people fully believe that this guy just one day got on a plane, went to Ukraine, put on some fatigues, and he's out there fighting the Russians on his. And I'm like, and that nicely clean fatigue. Like, you guys believe anything, man.
Right.
I don't believe that for anything. I don't believe any of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Adam, something you said earlier, this is going to sound like it's a non sequitur, but it's not. Something you said earlier reminded me of, you were talking about like Zelensky saying like, we need to, give us money now, and like now, or everyone will die. Like, there's this urgency, this sense of emergency, and tremendous amount of time pressure that's placed on decision making, right? There's all this pressure to make a decision now. People are dying right now. You don't have time to think about it. Do it right now. Make the decision. And it reminded me of something that when we were pregnant with my first daughter, which is over 13 years ago now, we had a midwife who was like, we were just first time parents, right? So we had a midwife like explain everything that was going to happen. And one of the things that she said, which always stuck with me, because I think it happens in lots of situations, is she said, look, the doctors are going to make you feel pressure to make decisions about stuff. If something is not, perfect, right? The doctors might make you feel pressure. You have to decide this. You have to decide that. Blah, blah, blah. Like, and they'll pressure you, and often they'll be pressuring you into the decision that they want, obviously. And she said, you got to remember, you always have time. They'll make it seem like you don't have time to make a decision, but you always have time to make a decision. You can always stop and make a decision. If you didn't have time and it was really life or death, they wouldn't ask you, right? Like, if there was really something going on, they wouldn't be consulting you. They would just do it because it was actually life or death. If they're asking you, it doesn't matter how much pressure they're putting on you. You have time to stop, tell them to leave the room, and think about your answer, and think about what you want to do, and weigh your choices carefully. And I think that's a metaphor for how a lot of this, especially in politics, how a lot of this kind of emergency decision-making gets pushed. We are bombarded with images of suffering victims, and then we have someone comments that you have to do this right now. If you don't do it right, every moment, there's a baby dying in Ukraine every 2 seconds, and if you don't do it right now, the evil Russians are going to... It's like every minute you delay, right? So it's this immense amount of pressure that's put on you, and it's designed to subvert your rational decision-making process and get your monkey brain activated instead of your rational mind. Right. So that you're not actually making rational decisions. You're just reacting in the way that they want you to.
No, I agree with everything you said as far as their tactic to do it. Part of me feels like Zelensky coming to Congress to speak was just par for the course. Like they were going to do it anyways, but they needed a validating push. Oh, well, he came here and he spoke to us. We got to do something now, you know. So I think that was more of a technicality.
He was invited, though, right? I think
he might have been invited, but just the fact that he came there to basically get billions of dollars from us to fight a war that essentially we have no part in. And it sounds maybe selfish as an American who's not part of some war going on to say like it's not our business, but I think about, well, why isn't it the EU's business? They're right next door, you know. And I've heard people say, oh, they're giving a little bit of money, but why are we the primary financiers of this entire conflict? Oh, is it because it's our proxy war? Is it because we're funneling money to corrupt actors that benefit maybe people within our government? Is that the case? So, you know, I have so many questions when it comes to this entire thing, but especially why is the EU, this big conglomerate that, you know, acts all high and mighty, that they do the right thing all the time? Well, why aren't they in there fighting alongside the Ukrainians? Why aren't they the ones funneling the money? Why aren't they have more of an actual interest than we do?
Well, it has nothing to do with crack pipes and hookers. I just want you to know that it's irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so the other thing that it seems like an honest question that should be asked, which I haven't seen the mainstream media or even like, I mean, maybe Fox as well, but I don't think so. I haven't seen even people on the right. Why aren't many people saying, wait a minute, why do we even have NATO? Like NATO was because of the Soviet Union. They dissolved. There's plenty of countries with political systems that we don't necessarily approve of, or that we think are flawed in some way, with leaders, and we have relations with them. We don't micromanage the internal politics of it. Well, the CIA might want to, but we don't micromanage the internal politics of everyone. Why is Russia so much different? Why didn't we say, hey, the Cold War's over. We don't need NATO anymore. We don't have to have a gang devoted to responding to Russia. In fact, hey, Russia, why don't you join a mutual protection? Why don't we just agree that if there's all of us will agree that if there's an aggressor, we'll all jump in against the aggressor. And my understanding is Russia wanted to join. They asked about joining NATO. And they were told no. Right.
I mean, the real question I have is, what is the UN even for? Like, why does it exist? They don't do anything. Like, why? Like, that's what the purpose of the UN should be. If there's an aggressor, then take it to the UN, and we, as a world, decide how to deal with it, and then we donate some troops to the peacekeeping mission, whatever. But instead, it's always us and NATO. But I mean, in that aspect, I can't blame Putin for getting mad about NATO expanding and stuff, because he really wasn't messing with NATO. And now NATO's posturing like they're ready to fight. You know, it's that classic back and forth thing where it's just amping up to who knows what comes next. But we're putting him in a worse position, honestly, by beefing up NATO right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And Russia has a legacy. I mean, my understanding is that culturally Russia is much more comfortable with like a strong man leading them. Like that's just culturally they're okay with that. But they also have a history of being invaded from the West, and people marching to Moscow. And so they are quite concerned about potential incursions. And, you know, here you've got this organization that's explicitly anti-Russian, which is what NATO is, kind of sitting on the borders, and they're saying, hey, I don't want Ukraine to join. Ukraine, there was no intention of Ukraine joining. It would have been really easy. The only thing we would have lost is maybe lost some face by admitting like, okay, they'll never join. But that was it. Just losing a little bit of face. You could have said, sure, they're not going to join. Don't worry about it. But we didn't. We didn't. And whether or not that was Putin's reason, it certainly was his pretext.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we helped to make a decision, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I think it's good that we have these questions to ask, and maybe there are logical answers to them that we're just unaware of. But I'm always suspicious of people who try to silence you from asking questions. Like, I'm not trying to assert that Russia's the good guy or anything like that, but why can't I ask these questions? Like, if someone was to explain to me that an adversarial group is working with a bordering country of mine and putting weapons along their border, I'd be like, yeah, I think I'd be concerned too.
Right.
You know,
Right.
You know, whether invasion is that right answer is a different story, but I think that might be a valid concern. You know, you had mentioned like how come we didn't work together with Russia, you know, decades ago after it dissolved. And I think about China, you know, the whole thing with us going into Vietnam was basically, I guess, from my understanding, it's kind of like a proxy situation with China being involved as well and supplying goods to North Vietnam, weapons to North Vietnam. But afterwards, they wanted to trade with us. And so it sounds like anyone that actually wants to engage in trade with us, they're A-okay with us. It doesn't matter anything else that they're doing with, hey, like, that's your business and your borders. We're okay with that. As long as you trade with us, as long as you use our banks or you use our goods, then we're perfectly fine with that. And so I think Russia has always been seen as adversarial as far as partnership and trade, and especially resources. You know, they have a ton of oil, and we started building up, you know, Middle East interests of oil. That's counter interests of ours. So yeah. I think all of this comes down to resources, in the end.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. I mean, and truthfully, I think Russia and China combined, if they were to ally, and I know I know that in the Chinese Communist Party, they're not a lot of the higher ups there are not super keen on an alliance. There, some of them are mad at Xi for his soft stance on Russia, but so maybe that an alliance it wouldn't happen. But I mean, if you want to talk about a way to take out the petrodollar, a Russian-Chinese alliance on currency would do it, I think. And so I mean, there is kind of a real threat there, but I think you're right. Just being able to ask the questions. I mean, it's like COVID, right? COVID came along, and it wasn't that I didn't believe everything. It was that, like, I wasn't allowed to ask questions, and that's what made me not. It's same with the election. Actually, the 2020 election's a better example to me. I've seen conflicting stuff. Like, I'm not even going to say I think it was stolen or not stolen. Like, I don't have a strong opinion because I think it's complex and there's a lot of stuff there. And sometimes I see claims and then it turns out they're not very well researched, and actually it wasn't a problem when someone says it was a problem, all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to make a statement, but I will say this. When you're not allowed to ask, that says all I need to know. Right? When you're not allowed to question it, and the answer is it was the most secure election ever, and how dare you question it, and don't question any of this. It's like, well, that's really all I need to know about this. And it's the same with this situation. It's like, well, Putin bad, Ukraine awesome. That's all you need to know. Stop asking questions.
But now it seems like you can ask some questions.
A little bit.
For what reason?
Well, here's that article that you brought up. Is this the one you're thinking of?
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Corruption concerns involving Ukraine are revived as the war with Russia drags on. This is an AP article. There's the man. Revived from whom? Yeah. Okay. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky's dismissal of senior officials is casting an inconvenient light on an issue that the Biden administration has largely ignored since the outbreak of war with Russia. Ukraine's history of rampant corruption and shaky governance. Wow. All right. We don't have to read the whole article, but yeah, that's interesting. Those issues, which date back decades and were not an insignificant part of the former President Donald Trump's first impeachment, had largely pushed back to the back burner in the immediate run-up. How come they're not mentioning? Is Hunter in here at all?
I don't.
Oh, here we go.
No.
Allegations, interactions. He sought derogatory information against. Oh, okay, that's it. The only reference is the damn Trumpies.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, I mean that is maybe the CIA wants. Maybe they feel left out, and they want something to do. So they're like, "Hey, how about regime change? We can use the war as an excuse for regime change. We have a whole plan. I know it didn't work out well in 2014, but we could do it again this time, guys. It's better."
I mean, at this point, think about this. I think this is like a genius idea, guys. So instead of questioning things and pointing out, rational things that people should be looking at or talking about, we should just like brand ourselves as psychics and be like, in 6 months, we're going to find out Ukraine is really corrupt.
Yeah.
Right? Like in 6 months, we'll find out, like we would make millions.
I know. Yeah, a year ago we could have been like,
behind.
small businesses will suffer immensely. There'll be a transfer of wealth to large corporations in the tech sector.
Exactly.
Ooh. When you make an argument, they don't listen. But yeah, maybe if we just like it was a divine, like we reached the netherworld and they're channeling future information. Maybe they'd have listened.
My prediction is
sad.
My prediction is in 3 months, there will be notable people calling for the removal of Zelensky. That's my prediction.
I like it.
Wait, who will call for the removal?
Just someone, or maybe a number of notable people, whether it's in government. It could even become popular narrative that Zelensky is corrupt and he should go.
So blue check mark. We'll start tweeting it.
Yeah, there you go. That's even better. Yeah. Blue checks, so we like suddenly realize that their hero is actually a villain, and he needs to go all of a sudden. So,
yeah, and they knew it all along. They were always really just about the Ukrainian people.
That's right.
Zelensky. And they were never really fooled.
Right.
Just to be clear.
I saw it from day one. I knew it ever since I saw him wear that green shirt, and he wasn't holding the gun right.
That's right. And then they'll say CIA pigeon number 1 is the best candidate for presidency. Who will this stooge? CIA stooge A is the candidate that I've always liked better. We should figure out who that is. Our predictions can be more accurate. We should. If anyone has an in at the CIA, tell us who they're planning.
Yeah, we should pick a future leader, like how we picked the after we took over Afghanistan, the new president of Afghanistan. It was like, who the hell is this guy? And he's like, oh, he's worked with the U.S. for decades and done stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, oh, okay, he's the
what
president.
do you know?
All of a sudden. Oh, okay.
Yeah, maybe Hunter can recommend who the next president should be.
He probably knows.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
He's like, that guy Igor. Which one? I don't know.
Igor, Igor.
Oh man.
All right. Well, Juliet, what do you think? What do you think is a story we should be paying attention to?
Okay. There's always so many to choose from, but this time I think the like economic outlook report is coming out in the next couple days or something. But what's her name, Janet Yellen, has been reassuring us that it's not going to be that bad. It's not a recession because we added a lot of jobs in the month of June. And so that's they're hiring, right? So that's a good thing. And it just drove me up the wall because, first of all, lots of college students get summer jobs. So a lot of those jobs are probably not going to still be there come September. And I mean, anecdotally, but I personally know at least 5 people that have gone out and gotten a second job recently, just because the cost of living is getting so high that you need it. So they're pretending it's a good thing, but really it's probably the exact opposite of that. It's probably a lot of people getting second jobs, switching careers, that kind of thing.
I haven't looked, but I guess it's important for people to understand, right, that jobs data. So I don't know about this particular jobs report, but jobs data does count part-time jobs. So if you went from having a good full-time job to losing that job and having to pick up some part-time work, you might end up with 2 part-time jobs, and the jobs number will go up if that happens. Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up because, okay, before we even get into this, it's been my experience. I was thinking about this morning. It's been my experience that whenever, not everyone is like this, but many people are. Whenever we talk about economics, a lot of people don't feel like it's viscerally important. Like they don't care. And I don't know. I just want your theory before we even get into this, because I don't know if it's that they don't care or if they feel powerless, so it doesn't matter. Like if we're going into a recession, there's nothing they can do about it personally anyway, so they don't want to hear about it or don't care about it. Or is it they just don't see the connection between economic, like macroeconomic problems and their own personal lives?
Juliet, you can go first.
I would, I think it could be partially like education. Just people really don't understand what any of that means to them. Yeah, or because it's such a large scale thing that, and nobody ever really breaks it down for the individual family. What does this mean for you and your life? So it could be that. I mean, I even tend to check out when it comes to the economy because it just seems like some like concept I don't quite grasp, but they never taught it to us. So I think they like it that way. I think it's better in general if the general population doesn't truly understand it well enough to read the signs.
Well, that's
themselves.
Certainly true.
Yeah.
What do you think, Adam?
I would say that I think for the average person, economics is more of a feel than a number, right? So they can come out with like, oh, we added 100,000 jobs. And people are like, yeah, but I don't feel like the economy is doing well because, of my personal experience, of my friends' experience, or whatever it may be. It's a general feeling within the environment. So like I remember complete optimism about the economy before COVID when Trump was in office. I worked for a staffing agency, and so they had lots of jobs and they were hiring people and they were trying to keep up with the jobs, right? So I got to see it in one aspect as well, not just through like personal, but also from a business aspect where business was booming, one of their best years, everything was going great. Lots of jobs. They were having trouble filling the jobs. That's how many jobs were becoming available. So, it's definitely a feeling. I think that people kind of see it. And obviously, like, people are selfish, like we're naturally selfish. If things are going wonderful for me and maybe the immediate people around me, you're kind of like, I think generally everything is fine. And then maybe you'll be like, oh, people are exaggerating. I think also that kind of initial thing where you kind of look immediately around you, and if the media says one thing, but your reality is something different, to dismiss it, is kind of the problem with having the the financial elite kind of dictating how the world is going, because in their world everything is fine because their inner circle, they're highly educated, highly employed, high income earners. In their world, everything is fine. So when we say, "Hey, the economy's kind of shit," and they're like, "God, the gas is a little bit expensive."
Yeah, buy a Tesla.
Right, just buy a
Quit
Tesla.
moaning.
It's a
My
it's a
driver
complete
drives
disconnect.
Teslas.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So it's a complete disconnect, and I think that's
Yeah.
one of the problems with having our media be part of this upper class that kind of looks down upon people. So when we make complaints, maybe valid complaints about like, "Hey, I don't feel like things are going well," they're like, "Oh, Trumper, calm down, everything's fine." So yeah, I think that's the general view. That's kind of how I see how people see the economy.
No, I think you're probably right. Well, I think you're both probably right, because I don't know if first I just want to read. It's not a super chat, but I like Dion is she is like on it with quotes always. And this is just a really good one. It's a Mark Twain quote. It's quote, and it says, "Figures don't lie, but liars figure." Yes, yes, they do. I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but economics as a field of study was really invented by the American progressives in the late 19th century. So it was when you were talking about economics, it was really just like business owners would like talk about what they were doing, and like there wasn't this separate field of study called economics. It wasn't a separate thing, and it became a separate thing. I think partly because of the progressive agenda, which was to build an administrative state where everything was centrally managed, and that includes money. And when you start centrally managed money, suddenly, the most powerful thing you can manage in an economy is money. Right. In an entire industry, like the entire society, you control the money. You basically control everything. So, and it wasn't until like 1913 that we get the Federal Reserve, and then obviously we slowly go off the gold standard until Nixon severed that, I think in 67 or 70 or something like that. I don't remember. But I think a lot of people, what they've done is they've made it so complex, right? Because it's not necessarily complex from a fundamental perspective. It's like if you just start with a blank slate free market, it's like, okay, well, there is complexity there. I'm not saying there's not complexity, but people understand supply and demand curves, and like there's not, you can kind of explain it, and it's somewhat, I wouldn't say completely predictable, but it's somewhat understandable. And there's freedoms to move and to adapt relatively quickly. But when you get into the system that we have now, it is like you're saying, Adam, manipulated by a small group of people at the top, right? So if you're a central banker, or you're part of if you're part of the Fed or you're a central banker or whatever, you're manipulating the economy using the tools that you have available, and you do get a trickle down effect, not in the way Reagan talked about it, but you get the first people to get issued new money, for example, are the upper class, the elites, the people on Wall Street. By the time it gets down to you, inflation has hit and you're paying more for bread at the store anyway, by the time that money, gets into your pocket. So it is, and it's kind of this Ponzi scheme where who knows how long this Ponzi scheme will last. Like you've got people, I love Peter Schiff, who's constantly predicting. He called the economic crisis, the mortgage crisis, correctly. But he's also like been saying the dollar's going to collapse eventually. The dollar's going to collapse. And people accuse him of being a broken clock. And they're like, okay, well, you'll be right sometimes, right? And he's not wrong. All of the fundamentals that he cites are correct, but it's the prediction of when, because so much of it is psychology. Like, when will the psychology flip? When will the creditors recognize that this is going to fall apart? When will it be too much for the system to bear? And you've got these manipulators at the top who are basically you're at a party and you're high on cocaine, and they're basically trying to like, can we give you more cocaine? Can we give you more cocaine? You get tired. Like, here's some more coke. Here's some more coke. And like, eventually that won't work. But how many lines of coke you can do, and how often you can get tired until and keep taking coke until your heart explodes, it's hard to predict, and we don't really. I think it's really difficult for people to know. But the recession stuff. Here's what I want to show. The recession stuff, the White House started doing this, which is a problem. Hey, what is a recession after all?
Oh.
Yeah. So, actually, before we even do this, I'm going to read. I won't show this because it is a pain in the ass to show multiple screens. But here's the definition. If you just search, you can even use Google. Just search on Google for recession, and it pops up right away, and it says a period of temporary economic decline during which trade and industrial activity are reduced, generally identified by a fall in GDP in 2 successive quarters. So it's not a strict definition, of course, but generally fall in GDP in 2 successive quarters. So along comes the Biden administration. What is a recession? This is like, what is a woman? What is a recession? I don't know. I'm not a biologist. While some maintain, as if this is like some weird fringe thing. Juliet claims that it's 2 consecutive quarters of falling real GDP. That's what she claims. But, that's not official. That's not the way economists. We found some economists at Yale who disagree. So basically, we don't need to read it, but this entire thing is all about how, well, it's very complex, and who's to say what a recession is, and we'll find out later if it was a recession, because we don't really declare it at the time anyway, and it's definitely not, there might be another negative quarter GDP, and definitely that doesn't mean we're in a recession. That's not what that means, so stop blaming Joe Biden. That's kind of what this is.
So what you're saying is, they're basically saying, what exactly is a cocaine line? How straight is one really? I mean, does the length really matter? I don't know.
What exactly is a heart attack? You're not having one now. There are many reasons for pain in your left arm and your heart to stop. It might not be a heart attack. Yeah.
We
and
go
if
to
it is a heart attack, it's certainly not Joe Biden's fault.
Yeah. Actually,
unless
it
it's
is
the 9mm in which your lung explodes.
We'll go to our cocaine expert, Hunter Biden, who will let us know.
Yeah, we should ask Hunter. He'll know. So here's what I want to share with people, though.
Yeah.
Because I know people don't want to get into complex economics, and it doesn't really matter. Like you're saying, Adam, it doesn't really matter if we're technically in a recession or not. It matters how people feel about the economy and what their day-to-day life is like, and if gas is $7 a gallon and you can't pay your mortgage or your rent, it doesn't really matter whether Yellen calls it a recession or an economic boom.
Right.
It still sucks. So, but I want to share this one. I want to share this thing because hold on for a sec. It's just you got to zoom out. I think the way to look at economics often is to zoom out and realize the big picture first, and then realize, the timing on what's going to happen here is bad, is not clear, but understand the predicament we're in generally. And this is not all Biden's fault, by the way. This is a number of presidents, including Trump, also Biden. This is M1. M1 is basically our money supply. Now, our money supply matters because if, let's say, we have one pizza to split between the 3 of us and it's 12 slices, well, we could each theoretically have 4 slices of pizza. So, that's how. So our entire exchange is based on like there being 12 slices of pizza. So things would cost, let's say I want a line of Coke from Juliet, and she's like, well, that's 1 slice of pizza for a line of Coke. Fine. Right? Now, but if we cut that pizza up into 1 million slices, Juliet's going to be like, well, I'm sorry, but 1 slice of pizza It's not 1/12 of everything anymore. It's 1/1,000,000th of everything. And so it's a lot more slices of pizza to get your line of Coke, Carter. Right. So, and that's what inflation is. Like suddenly I'm spending lots more because each slice of pizza is worth less. Right. So here we are. Here we are in our money supply. This is what you can tell. They've been, this is what they call printing money. There's many ways to do it. So it's not actually a printing press, but you can see our money supply is pretty steady. It grows a little bit. Reagan certainly went into debt, some money supply problems, but still we're down here at what, $140 billion total in circulation. And, we start to get really bad. We wage some more. We've got some wars in Iraq to fund and blah, 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 and other stuff going on. We start printing money a lot more. So we're pretty bad. I mean, we're already pretty bad right here. We're at 4,000 billion, which is 4 trillion. We're already at 4 trillion by the end of 2019 here. It's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. And people, by the way, I mean, most of my life obviously has lived in this area, and people have been complaining about money printing forever, right? People can say it's unsustainable. They said it, Peter Schiff said it back, I don't know, 2006 or 2005. It's unsustainable. It's unsustainable. It's unsustainable. This is what they're saying. It's unsustainable. It's getting crazy. It's unsustainable. So here we go. The end of 2019, we're at $4 trillion in circulation. And what happened after that? Boom. We are at roughly $20 trillion. I mean, it's just a hockey. It's like a cliff. We just hit a vertical wall. We just turned the printing presses on and we're like, screw it. We are Zimbabwe. Like, we're just going to print our way out of everything. This, I don't know what effect this will have in the next month or year, exactly how, but I do know this. Taking this much cocaine will have consequences. I don't know when, I don't know where, but this is not good for your heart. Right? Yeah. Like, you've taken a lot of coke. The piper's going to, or as they call him, Hunter Biden, he's going to come to collect, or you're going to have to pay the piper someday. You're going to have to pay the piper. And that's where we are. That's our economic situation broadly. Like, this is really important. Yeah, there's other things. There's job numbers and GDP and growth. Like, all that stuff matters. This is controlling. This is over. This is from 4 trillion to 20 trillion in the matter of a couple of years. That's insane. It's a little bit more than a year, basically. That's it. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And to have any economist say this is irrelevant, or to have Yellen not address this is the elephant in the room. And I don't hear it being talked about very much. Do you guys hear this being talked about very much?
Nope.
Other than you and Tim Pool, that's basically it.
Oh, does Tim Pool talk about it?
Yeah, he talks about it often.
Good. Okay.
So what you're saying is, with that graph that you're showing, I know it says M1 money stock, but that looks like the Putin price hike. Isn't that what that actually is?
It's all Putin's fault, Adam.
Clearly.
That's gas prices, and that the knee in the curve is when Putin invaded Ukraine, which actually, I don't know if you realize, happened in January 2020. We didn't realize it till later.
Yeah, it's the premonition of the Putin price.
That's right. Yeah. The market anticipated his invasion, and that's what happened.
That's right.
Yep.
Look, and I'm not trying to be a doomsdayer, and I recognize some people are like, maybe don't want to hear this because they don't. What can you do about it? And I think what you can do is recognize, like, there are times to play in the stock market and there are times to be conservative. I'm not giving you financial advice, but there's times to buy ammo.
Yeah.
There's a huge ammo shortage, though, so maybe it's not an easy thing
it's about
to do.
Everything
the
shortage.
Only guy have you guys seen? Do you guys follow Rubini?
No.
He's one of my favorite. Nouriel Rubini is one of my favorite. They call him like Dr. Doom. He's like a more mainstream version of Peter Schiff. Like, he's not. I don't think he's an Austrian economist. So he's got some of the, Keynesian ideas going on, but he's pretty good at analysis. He predicted the 2020 or the 2008 recession as well, and mortgage crisis. And he's been predicting, like, first he was saying, hey, there's going to be a recession. And everyone was like, no, there's not, you idiot. And then the people were like, well, there's going to be a recession, but it's going to be a soft landing. And I was just reading this article by him. I'll link to it if people want to. It's called A Stagflationary Debt Crisis Looms. He was saying, hey, it's going to be not a soft landing. It's going to be a hard landing, and stop saying it's going to be a soft landing. This is a real problem. And as he points out, we have a combination of two things we haven't had in the past, which is a huge debt ratio. We're in like a massive, massive debt to GDP ratio, and inflation. And those two things usually don't happen together. Well, and stagflation. And those two things don't usually happen together. And so stagflationary debt is like really, really, really bad. And we're just kind of ignoring this. And I think maybe you're right that there's the people in power in Washington are like, well, everything's fine for me. My portfolio is still good. And, the people around me aren't homeless. So I don't know what the problem is. The gas prices are high, buy a Tesla, shut the hell up. The third estate can go to hell. Everything's fine. Everything's fine in the states number 1 and 2. So who cares? But I really don't think I'm not an economist. I hate to make predictions, but if I was a betting guy, I would be betting with Nouriel right now, with Rubini right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can add to the doomsday.
Oh, good.
So, we have all these issues that are happening, and we have this, I want to say within the past few years, we've had this consistent need to run to the federal government for every problem. And they've become, especially under the Biden administration, they've become basically complicit with just print until you need to print some more, with everything. Oh, we'll chip in here. We'll add more to this. We just talked about foreign conflict. Here's billions of dollars. Take it. No oversight. And no, we don't want to pay back. Just have at it. Have fun with $60 billion.
Have good. Hey, have fun, Hunter.
Yeah. But the other thing that's happening is, and this is now starting to be complained about in New York City with Mayor Eric Adams, is the immigration issue. Now what's happening is the immigration issue is leaving the borders, so to speak. It's always left the borders. People go all over the place. But the crisis at hand at the border is now making its way to northern cities, northern states. And New York City is a great example where people are going there. I remember months ago, there was footage talking about migrants who made it over the border or getting flown over to New York State in the middle of the night and then make their way into New York City. So now they're there, and now they're overwhelming all the resources, or they're contributing to the overwhelming the resources. We know, who knows how bad it was beforehand and because of COVID.
Yep.
But they're contributing to overwhelming of the resources. And now Eric Adams is complaining about it. So what's the solution? Well, of course, we need federal support. We need more money to support the issue that was created by the federal government by basically having a catch and release program that has exacerbated the problem. I was watching this footage that was taken at the border, and they were discussing it. And basically they were like, it was almost like as soon as Biden hit office, it just exploded with the number of people trying to come across the border, because they knew what he was going to do. He was going to change the policy, and it was going to become catch and release. When asked how many of these people actually go to their asylum hearings, he was like, virtually none of them, because they're already here. And now you have no idea where they are. And it's the most asinine thing that I've ever seen as far as trying to have some sort of policy. And I know it's not simple. It's not as simple as just change this policy, everything becomes better. But man, this is not the solution, clearly. You have people who have an incentive to come here. They cross the border. you detain them for a period of time, write them a permission slip, and off they go. And you have no idea where they're going. It's like the theme of the story is no oversight whatsoever. The federal government has zero oversight, nearly no responsibility for anything, with all of the power and all of the money. So I think this is going to be the next driving force. And unfortunately, like, the damage has already been done. They could change the policy tomorrow. The people are here. You know, I was listening to one guy, he was saying that basically, like, at one section, 500 people at least a day come flowing through. And they all become asylum seekers, and they disappear into the country. And who knows where they're going. And, oh, shit, that's right. I was just looking at something. Now they want to give them government IDs. Now they want to give them government IDs so they can get benefits. And it's just like, this is what's the point of this? What's the point of us having a border? What's the point of any of this stuff? They can, like, this isn't, and what's crazy is this is one of those things that we can't question unless you're a racist, a xenophobe, or something like that. They're like, no, we can't save the planet. If we try to save the planet, we will destroy our own planet. We will destroy everything. We can't save everybody in every country. We don't have the resources to do so. We barely have enough resources to do for ourselves. And it sucks because we get labeled as the richest country in the world. And that because of that, we have the endless funds and we could just do everything all the time for everything. But I think the migrant crisis is really going to hurt us in regards to our economic prosperity, and maybe finding jobs, and even those second jobs that people are trying to take to catch up for the first job that isn't cutting it. Well, guess who's going to take those second jobs too? Those low-income second jobs. I've seen it. You know, I'm in New Jersey. I see that we have all these factories. We have Amazon. We have all these things that are going on. Manufacturers, they're not hiring people like us. You know, they're hiring illegal immigrants. They're not checking their status unless like that's just their company policy what they do, and most of them do not. So this is going to be the reality. You can't even get a low income job to supplement the poor income that you're making with your first job.
This is one of those topics, though, where I think there's a lot of nuance, and you're right. Whenever anyone brings anything up, it's, well, Adam, you must be a xenophobe racist because you want to have a discussion about doing anything about illegal immigration, right? And I think it's, I don't know. Part of me says the U.S. we could actually eventually save the world, but to do that, we would have to do it with ideas, and we would have to say, hey, everyone, you know why we're the richest nation in the world? You know how we got here? Individual rights, liberty, freedom. Here's a system of government, which, you know, it's falling apart for us now, but look, it works for a couple hundred years at least. Why don't you give it a shot, and we can kind of fix it when it falls apart later? But this is how we got here, right? Because I think one of the things that I can't stand about the left is I think it's condescending to look at people from other countries and think, well, they'll never be able to be rich like us. We have industry and all these things and blah, blah, blah. And like, they can't do that. So we need to give them a handout, right? Rather than all we really need to do is clue them in like, hey, we figured some shit out. It turns out if you leave people alone and let them be free and like, if you set up this kind of system, people are amazingly creative and smart and they produce a massive amount of wealth. Like, try that out, guys. Try that out. But instead, we subsidize everyone, which basically keeps them on our teat, right? It keeps them down, because if you're paying for them, then they never have to learn, and you've kind of enslaved them through a paycheck, which is what we do. So that's one of the most frustrating things to me about this idea of like U.S. being the savior for everyone is like the people that are wanting to do it aren't even really wanting to save everyone. They're just wanting to gut the wealth of the U.S. rather than they act like there's a certain amount of wealth in the world, and it's mostly in the US, and so it just needs to be divvied up. And like, yeah, maybe our standard of living will go down, but theirs will get raise up and will be equal, and that's what matters. But that's not true at all. Like, the wealth we have is brand new. It was created in the last couple hundred years. Like, wealth is created. Let there be more. Teach people how to make pizza. Stop divvying up the pizza you've got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point.
The other thing I want to point out about immigration is this was less of a problem when there wasn't a welfare state and there wasn't massive government infrastructure. When it was local infrastructure, and it wasn't, the federal government wasn't involved, and there wasn't a huge safety net, and there wasn't a lot of government wasn't funding huge universities and free education everywhere. Like, when it was much more, as I guess the left would say, like, cold-hearted, laissez-faire, sink or swim, when that's how it was, you could have a lot more immigration. It could be legal, and a lot of immigrants would choose to go home. I think something like a third of the immigrants at the early 20th century turned around and left. They were like, this sucks, I don't like it. But the ones that stayed assimilated into the culture and were productive and end up being some of the most productive groups, right? And we don't have that either. So now the incentives are, we've got really perverse incentives for people, right? I don't mind having immigrants come in. I think it could be great if there was no downside. If it was like, yeah, you can come in, but you're not getting anything out of it. Like, if you want to come in and contribute, go ahead. Absolutely. But you don't get free school. You don't get free health care. You don't get subsidized. New York City, by the way, is a sanctuary city. So it's kind of rich that they're like, we're ignoring the federal laws, but hey, can we have some federal money as a result of the crisis we've created by ignoring federal laws, right? Like, that is absolutely ridiculous. So we've created this perverse incentive structure, and I just feel like almost no one wants to talk about why immigration is such a problem. I don't think it would be such a problem if it was, hey, sink or swim. You're welcome to come here, but it's sink or swim, man. Good luck.
Well,
right.
And I'm sorry, Juliet, you're gonna say?
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say we have a bad situation here in the States, but I think it's even worse in places like the UK and throughout Western Europe, where they have a welfare state without a doubt. And some of the stuff like the UK is doing, it's just like, it's almost like cutting their nose off to spite their face kind of stuff. But it's just, it's ridiculous. And this is one of those things too. If you question it, you're a xenophobe, but you're like, how does this make sense? And I think even more so, like people who are coming from, let's say, Central America or even Mexico, coming here is not much of a cultural clash, right? A lot of them, if they're religious, they're Catholic. So, we're a relatively Christian society. There's not really a cultural clash. There's cultural differences, small, but we're a melting pot, right? And so we've experienced all these different things. Places like Europe, there's a cultural clash when it comes to a lot of their migrants coming through. They're either Christian or agnostic. I think they're pretty much not hyper religious over there, maybe less so than we are. But you can say that the people who are coming through are overwhelmingly Muslim, and they come from a different culture. So it's not even just the faith aspect, but it's the cultural environment aspect, their standards of what they see, whether women are clothed, show their face, these are different things that they may or may not be used to. And I've talked to people throughout Europe who have questions, but they're like, you can't ask these things. Or, I've talked to people in Germany, they kind of cover it up. They kind of say, well, that wasn't really what happened. Oh, this is exaggerated. And they just kind of move on. Meanwhile, the people there are like, hey, like, something's not right here. And part of it is because they created an industry on top of it. But especially like the UK. I wish I could remember the details, but that now that the UK is not part of the EU, even more so, the migrants who made it to France, they're just putting them on boats and shipping them across the channel, and the UK is just taking them in open arms, even more so. So now they're taking them in, and so now they feel obligated to house them, and they give them all these benefits, and they want to house them. But obviously, where are you going to house these people? So I remember this is this one story. They wanted to house, it was something like almost like 10,000 or maybe less than 10,000 people in a small town that would have been larger than the population that is currently there. Like it would have been ridiculous for them to do so. And so like the people were outraged for a while. And the last I heard about it was that they delayed the plans to do this. But it's that like you have a cultural clash, you have an unsustainable model of housing everybody and taking care of everybody, and viewing everybody as this unfortunate person who's unfortunate means, and they're escaping this and that. They don't know where these people come from a lot of times. How do you verify? You know, Carter, you work for the government. How do you verify that this person is actually from Syria? Like, how do you verify that? You don't know. And they could say, oh, I don't have my passport. I dropped it on my travels. Okay, then what?
Yeah, I mean, and of course, because especially if you are fleeing for persecution or some of these war-torn areas, it's entirely possible you would have no papers.
Right.
Right.
So it's not uncommon. I mean, it wouldn't be abnormal, but the problem is that people know this. They take advantage of this. And my whole thing is like, okay, we see that overwhelmingly we're looking at young men who are coming through. So if people are escaping war, are they leaving their wife and children behind? You mean like none of these young men have wife and children? Or are they economic migrants and they're taking advantage of the opportunity to come over here and do like what other people do, is send money back or at some point bring them over? Could that possibly be it? And they're just taking advantage of there being a civil war in Syria from years ago, and the sort of good gracious of the EU to open their arms and causing all this chaos. So, while our issue is bad here, at least we don't have the cultural conflict that they have there, or we don't have the complete abundance mindset as far as we'll take care of everybody. Right. It's not nearly as bad as over there.
Let me ask you both a question, because you're both Christian and I'm not Christian, but I grew up, we're all kind of culturally grew up with aspects of Christian society. If you grew up in America, it seems that there's some sort of aspect of our culture in which we are happily willing to accept unearned guilt, that we somehow feel guilty for our position, and that we therefore must wear a hair shirt and beat ourselves or sacrifice something for the downtrodden. And while of course no one is against benevolent charity, like that's fine, like but there's a difference between that and this kind of mindset of we must punish ourselves for our success, or we feel guilty about our success. And it seems like as a culture, America generally feels guilty for its success, and it's trying to commit slow seppuku, or at least sacrifice itself for everyone else. And does it come from Christian culture? Is it something else? What do you guys think? Or am I wrong completely?
That's a tough one. I mean, I definitely we have this weird cultural obligation to help. I mean, look, Ukraine, every major disaster that ever happens, who is donating at Starbucks? Americans. You don't see Brazil sending millions of dollars of aid when there's a massive earthquake somewhere, right? Like it's something in us, like culturally. I don't know. I mean, I guess if it goes back to just like the basic principle of charity and like, definitely there is a Christian aspect of like kind of being obligated to like help those that are downtrodden. But I don't know. I don't know what that is. Like I don't know if you can link it directly to like anything scriptural. I don't know. What do you think, Adam?
I'm like going back and forth in my head because, yeah, there are aspects of Christianity that, say like duty to help, but I'm thinking like absent of faith, I think people are more willing to help when their needs are satisfied.
Mhm.
So let's just say most people have their needs met. Shelter, food, water. Those needs are met, and so they may be more willing to shell out money to help other people. And so if we are, and I'm going to go back to what I said before, the richest nation in the world, that means that our needs are more so met than maybe a lot of other countries. So when a disaster happens, yeah, I can spare $10 for Red Cross, and if 1 million people do that, then, then you keep going up and up and up. So I wonder if, yeah, maybe it's partly the Christianity or the culture of Christianity of service and helping people. But I think it could also be just the idea of if people are economically fine, they're more willing to release some of their money.
But there's a nuance I wanna get at here because I don't think the problem is that we have too many people who are charitable. I think the problem is that we have people who are charitable with other people's money. Like the problem isn't that there's a bunch of leftists who are wanting to donate to Ukraine voluntarily. That's not a problem. Go ahead.
Right.
Donate all you want. In fact, if you want to help Syrian migrants, open your house up. You probably have a spare bedroom in your Hollywood mansion, or two. Go ahead. No one's stopping that. I wouldn't complain about it. Like, if that's what they want to do and they want to use their resources to help people. I mean, maybe illegal immigration I have a problem with, but generally, like, if they want to use their resources to help people, that's fine. But they seem to, it's like they get a really good rate of return rather than spending $10 to help. They would rather spend $10 to force everyone to spend $100. Like, instead, I'll spend $10 to get this candidate who's going to force everyone. God damn it! That's what they want to do. It's not that they want to help; it's that they want to force everyone else to do it. And there's something different. That doesn't seem like Christian charity to me.
Yeah, no, that's something different. It almost to me sounds like big philanthropy. You're kind of touching upon that a little bit. If I go to like McDonald's or Walgreens or something, and they say, "Do you want to donate money?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to donate money to whatever NGO or whatever cause you got going on because I don't trust any of them." I think it's all part of like this big philanthropy scheme where 5% of the money that they get actually goes to whatever cause, and who knows how successful that is. But I think there is that corporate interest in philanthropy. And outside of like the corporate interest, I think there is an abundance of people who are virtue signaling, who want to appear as gracious and giving, but deep down inside, they really don't want to. They'd rather do everything possible to appear that way without actually doing anything substantial to do so. And sometimes like throwing money at a problem is actually like not beneficial whatsoever. It doesn't help anything. So like, I remember, and this is not necessarily about the things we were talking about, but one of the creators of Friends said that she wants to give money to help diversity in TV shows or something. So she's like, I'm going to donate $1 million. Right. Well, I mean, I think she's, have hundreds of millions of dollars. So, it's kind of a drop of money, but it's not nothing. But who does she give it to? She gives it to an institution, like a higher learning institution. She's basically giving the money back to the same crowd of people that she got the money from in the first place. So, you know, it's not who's that actually helping, or is it just the facade of helping? You know, I think there's a lot of facade of helping these days.
I think you're right. You can definitely there's this opportunity to earn virtue credits without actually having to do the thing, right? So like if I have to give $10 to get a little bit of virtue, let's say, like, oh, people will think I'm generous because I've donated $10 to whatever. But I can get that same thing by just holding up a sign saying vote for Bernie. Like, well, like that's a better payoff. I don't have to spend the $10 and I can virtue signal where I can tweet about it and be like, oh, he cares so much. He wants to support the blah, blah, blah thing. It's like, okay, well, that costs me basically nothing. And I get the virtue out of it. Or I get the appearance of being virtuous is a better way to put it. You're reminding me, there's one thing I want to, actually a couple things. Years ago, I went from someone who was like pro charity, like, oh yeah, you should be donating to like, you know, not you have to, but like, it was a benevolent, fine thing to do to donate to charities, and that was like, you know, like a normie, I guess. Charities are good, blah blah blah. And I remember at one point, I forget who I was working for. I think my company had been acquired. I was working for some publicly traded company, and they had this thing where like you could choose a charity and they would match your donation or whatever. And so, but they had all this research. They had like this research material so you could make your choice of charity. And I remember researching, and I remember becoming horrified, like slowly becoming horrified that forget the stuff that you're talking about where like maybe only 5% of it goes to the cause, which is a problem in and of itself. Every single charity on their list, and these were basically the major charities, every single one of them spent a non-zero, but in often cases a large amount of money, lobbying the government for money. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I'm against the government giving them money. Like, this is not, I'm for private charity. I don't want to be taxed more. Why would I give my money to a charity that's going to turn around and hire someone on K Street to get more of my money? What the hell? And like, it was this, it blew my mind that so many people were voluntarily giving money to these charities who were turning around and spending that money to try and extract more from everyone at gunpoint. It was just unconscionable. And so I came to the conclusion, like, I basically stopped donating to charities altogether, except for like, I would find like small ones once in a while. And like, they don't do any lobby. It's like, you know, this tiny charity that does one tiny little thing and they don't do any lobbying. And like, okay, I'll do that. Right. But it's really disappointing to see because it's against your values. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm happy to help people, but I'm not happy to help them oppress me.
Right.
Well, like, what am I doing? Like, what a way to subvert my own values is to give money to a charity that's going to turn around and use the government to try and get more. So I also want to put a quote up here because I think it's important. Dillon, quote the quote queen here. Dion's got a quote from Stefan Molyneux, and I really like his position on this, so I want to talk about it. It says, there's a huge... I know Stefan Molyneux's like definitely wrong think. He's bad in every way, so we'll probably get banned from Twitter for mentioning his shout out to Stefan. Here's a huge swath of humanity there's a huge swath of humanity that has developed verbal abilities to extract resources from guilt-ridden people. They used to be priests, and now they're leftists. So I think what's correct about this, I think he's spot on. And this ties into something I've been thinking about. A couple things. I was talking about I've made the analogy in the past about the pre-French Revolution. Like there was the first estate, which is the nobles, or sorry, the priests, the second estate, which was the nobles, and the third estate, which is, hey, everyone else. And for a long time, it was the first and second estate with the king. They were in charge of everything. And one of the problems, one of the reasons the French Revolution happened is the king decided to call an assembly of all three estates and the third estate wasn't super happy, and some some priests started jumping ship, and then nobles and blah blah blah. So I think about that often when I think about the new system of government, like where those people went. And this is something that Molyneux, I have heard him talk about this, not in terms of French society, but I've heard him talk about this idea that like there was a class of people who made their money or made their living off of being the moral police, good or bad, for whatever. Mm-hmm. Like you could say they were good or bad, depending on, you know. But they made their money being the moral police, and they always had a good relationship with the king or the monarch in power, because they had to give the moral sanction to the monarch. Otherwise, people might rise up against the monarch. So that in exchange for the moral sanction, they get kind of a monopoly on ethics, right? Like that's the deal, right? You get your monopoly on ethics, go preach your thing, go preach your thing. You can maybe get some taxes out of it, or sometimes compulsion, sometimes just, you know, compel people through guilt. And they're very learned. These were the, you know, often the priestly class was the scholars, right? They were the ones who were educated, who could read, and they were language experts. And I think this analogy that the language experts have switched to being able to manipulate people into maybe not just giving money, but making certain political decisions and kind of creating this. It's a grifter class, really, is what it is. It's creating this. It's a grifter class of like, we have moral superiority. We will grant you absolution from all of your sins as a whatever person, or we will we'll let you we'll grant you some moral virtue signaling if you do the following things. If you put the Black Lives Matter sign on the front lawn, you get 3 points of moral virtue. If you add the sign that in this house we believe blah 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 and run on sentences, then you get, you know, another 3 points or whatever. Get a Bernie sign or whatever, you know. So that is an entire class of people. I don't think he's wrong. I think he's totally right about that. But the other thing, I'm just rambling, and then I want your thoughts on this. The other thing that I was thinking is, in the past, one of the reasons a person would become king, other than through lineage, right? Like, obviously, you know, you're born into it, but not being born into it, the other way you would be rule over people is through force. You would be the best at the use of force. You would be like a great general. You would be Genghis Khan, right? You could like eat meat and not have to eat for days, and be nomadic and just awesome warriors and just go, you know, rape and pillage and rule, right? So in order to rule, you had to be an expert in the use of force. I think we've transitioned. Into, in order to rule, it's actually that first class, it's that priestly grifter class that actually rules, because in a democracy or any kind of democratic system, obviously the guy who's the best cage match fighter or even the best general is not the guy who rules, but the guy who can manipulate you, the guy who can manipulate human psychology the best, or woman, they end up at the top of the dog pile. They end up ruling, because it's not Genghis Khan who wins. It's the master sophist. It's the master manipulator who is willing to or able to manipulate human psychology and get the crowd behind him. So that's my rant. What are your thoughts?
Juliet, you want to go first?
Okay.
Sorry, I know that was long.
No, I think you made a really, really solid point. And it, like, I feel like the easiest example right now is kind of like the trans movement. You know, like, it's, if you don't bow, then the like social punishment is becoming so intense. So now everyone is on board. Every company, like, just everything everywhere is about the trans movement. And it's a very, very small percentage of people that are actually affected in any way. So like, but it's like the grifter class, like they are now, that movement is kind of like the priests at this point. Like, people will get fired. I mean, in the next year or so, like with the way they're trying to pass laws and add gender identity to the Civil Rights Act and stuff. Like, it's literally like people are going to start getting fired if they have the audacity to say anything negative in the workplace ever. Like, I mean, it really does feel like we live in 1984 all at once. I mean, you have to say what you're supposed to say or face, I mean, true consequences, losing your job.
There's incantations and sacrifices you're expected to make to the priests, and if you don't,
right. Like, I mean, it's like there are people that still claim we have freedom of speech, but it's gone. I mean, you just have to you're right. You have to make your sacrifices, and then you'll be allowed to exist for another day. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely I don't even know what to say. It's just like we live in a really weird time not just like recent history, just the history of the earth. Right now it's a very strange time where it's almost as if the more people that claim to be extremely oppressed are wielding the most power over society.
Or who claim to speak for the oppressed, because I don't think it's always them either.
No, right? It's like the movement. Yeah, right. Very interesting. I don't know.
I don't think Ibram X. Kendi's actually oppressed in any way measurable,
no.
For example.
Yeah.
It makes me think, because you said the grifter class, it makes me think about actually Barack Obama, from the sense that you said, we don't have like the strong man, dictator that doesn't really go well, but you can behave like one. As long as you do it in a smooth way, as long as you give a peaceful message along the way as to why you have to commit an atrocity, or explain away the atrocity isn't really happening. And so it makes me think of Barack Obama, blowing up kids and increasing war conflict, even though when he was running for office, he said, no more stupid wars. We need to get out of this stuff, the paraphrase. And then got into more and increased it. Yet at the same time, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. And as he's walking out of the office, people say his biggest scandal was that he wore a tan suit. And it's like, it's because he had a way to hypnotize people, so to speak. This was more than like, to me, it was more than just like being tribal. Oh, he's a Democrat, I'm a Democrat, so I'm going to excuse certain things. But I think there is just a willful overlooking, justification. Like, he won these people over. No matter what you say, you cannot make Barack Obama look like a bad person to me. I don't care what you say. He blew up kids. Well, he wasn't the one who was flying the drones. Someone did. Well, he gave the order. Well, he was pressured into giving the order.
Like, world in Las Vegas is called. That's who it is.
Right. So, I mean, they'll do everything to rationalize or just completely ignore a heinous act. So, yeah, we don't have an overt Genghis Khan figure, so to speak, ruling the world, but you don't need to. Now, you can have other people do your dirty work while giving a message of peace along the way. We're here to give democracy to people as they're blowing them up. That kind of thing. Or my favorite, actually, is in one country we're fighting ISIS, and then in another country we're giving money to ISIS. That's one of my favorite. So I agree with what you're saying, though.
Yeah, he's an interesting one because as I think it was Mo here in chat points out, he's the first president to not be mocked by late night hosts. He was an amazing orator, not in the sense of, when I say orator, I mean in the way that Socrates would have said he's amazing. Like, he was an amazing manipulator of language and deliverer of speeches. He didn't say anything profound ever, really, that I can remember. But he really was able to, I think the word hypnotize you use. I love the word. He was able to hypnotize people. They love him. I think a lot of people that didn't like his politics still say they love him.
Well, there's partly a reason why, and I was talking to somebody about this not so long ago. His cadence. He spoke like a Southern Baptist preacher. When he had a big speech, that was what he would do. today is our time. We must.
Yep.
Like, who does he sound like?
Uh-huh.
MLK, Barack Obama. He had the same exact Southern Baptist preacher cadence, and people love that. Like that, there's something about it that sounds like God is speaking through him, even though he's talking about. He's not talking about God. He's talking about policy, or he's just talking in a vague generality. We need to do more and uplift people, without giving any specifics. And it just sounds, awe-inspiring when he says it. But when he's having a press conference, he's, I really think, he's not very charming. But, he was able to, I see it like he was able to be smooth enough, right? When generally speaking, we've had presidents who are kind of either bumbling, not very smooth, kind of crass, older. I think all those things kind of come into play. He was kind of like the young, cool, appearing, let's see what he's about, was a junior senator. And he was able to kind of get away with stuff like that. But definitely the cadence. The cadence made people like, oh, I love this. I love hearing this.
What's scary is I think about sometimes how much, let's rewind 300 years and think about the state of technology.
Mm-hmm.
We had the printing press, but, we didn't have radio, right? I think how much technology has evolved, and obviously there's a lot of great things with this conversation, and lots of great things can happen because technology's evolved, but we haven't evolved in our social evaluations of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you think someone like Obama would have been elected if you had to read about his position? If he had to write his speeches out and you read them in the paper and you read the other guys, no matter who it was, like, would he win?
No.
No, I don't think a lot
have won.
I mean, a lot of politicians wouldn't have ever been elected if you actually had to read. And they couldn't, I mean, a lot of them are charismatic people. And if they couldn't, that doesn't translate into text, black and white text at all. So, yeah, a lot of them are getting by on just the fact that people are drawn to them.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the popularity contest aspect of it. The cult of personality, which has existed my entire life. There's been some sort of cult of personality. But yeah, there's really, if you force them to say, like, I want to bring back jobs, they're like, how? Just ask how. Right. And they're like, oh, well, we're gonna have a robust economy. Well, how are you gonna have a robust economy? Like, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna speak to my advisors. Oh, so other people are gonna tell you exactly how this stuff. So
right, yeah.
I think for me, there aren't too many politicians where I'm just kind of like, I believe or think that they know most of what they're trying to do. I think they all, I hate the phrase talking points, but they have general talking points or general philosophy. But maybe they're in some ways leaders who are willing to stick their neck out a little bit. That's, to me, that's mostly what I'm looking for. Someone who's willing to kind of stick their neck out and say, like, despite, as a Republican president, despite half the Republicans not liking this, I'm going to do it anyways, right? That kind of thing. I think that's why people like Trump, for example, that Trump was willing to say F this sometimes and just do it anyways, even if his own party didn't like it. But yeah, I think that's what I mostly look for.
Yeah, I think the technology is a tool that that first estate, those manipulators, have mastered, right? And we, I say the third, I mean the people, we haven't really figured out how to use technology to see through manipulation so much as we've let it manipulate us. And so they've become much more powerful. Where in the past, maybe Obama could have been a local pastor and manipulated his town and been very popular. Now he can get the whole nation and even you could say the whole Western world behind him because he was so powerful, or because he was so good at that. I want to ask you guys a question before we leave. Gene Ellis wants us to talk about digital national currency. Do you guys? I certainly have lots of opinions, but I will shut up and let you guys. I'll throw that phrase out there. Go.
Okay. I personally can't think of anything scarier than a totally digital system, because you can't bury it in your backyard. You can't take it all out of a bank that's about to fail. It's just, and then if it's all digital, there's a trail for everything you do with it. So if you say nobody knows that you're an alcoholic and you drink a bottle a night or whatever, like the government will now know that because they'll see that you go to liquor stores every single day, and then they can pass that information on to your insurance company or your employer or whoever, like something like that. It leads to absolutely no privacy in any of your purchases, where you go, what you do. And it would, if it's all connected to a system where it can all be transferred and tracked in real time, they'll know everything about you. And that to me is pretty scary.
Adam?
Ditto.
No, I thought he was going to say, I love central bank digital currency.
I would say I agree with that as well. And I think the part I would add is I haven't really thought too much about this, because I really just hope that this is not really a thing that's going to happen. But to me, it sounds a lot like the beginning steps of the social credit score. And that's not a far-fetched thing to say, because we know a major country that has a social credit score. We look at people who are dealing with being canceled, right? And that's with private industry. Who's to say that the people who, like us, who are questioning narratives and saying the wrong thing, one day they say, you're locked out, you can't participate. Yep. So I definitely don't think it's a good idea. Did I say that? It was a double name. I don't think it's a good idea. Let's just put it like that. And I really hope that that's not something that's going to come to fruition.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree with both. So just so people who don't know what we're talking about, if you look it up, what you'll see is the phrase is central bank digital currency, and you'll see it abbreviated. CBDC is the abbreviation. I think it's an end game. I think it's the end game. I think it's, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. I think it's literally the end game. Because not only do they know everything about you, they can control your behavior, right? Like in the beginning of, we read for book club a while ago, we read Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale. And in the beginning of the book, she goes to a store to buy, I think, cigarettes. And it wasn't central bank digital currency, but it was a digital currency. It was central bank digital currency, but it wasn't the current technology, but the same functionality, right? She goes to buy cigarettes, and she can't. They say, "Oh, sorry, your account's been frozen. You don't have access to your money anymore." And I think of CBDC as, because people often call it a cryptocurrency. And here's the analogy I'll make. If cryptocurrency is like inventing a nuclear power plant that can cheaply and cleanly deliver electricity to an entire city's worth of people, central bank digital currency is a nuclear bomb. And that's how similar the technologies are. Sure, there's some underlying similarities, but really, really, really different purposes. like crypto was designed to be decentralized. Like, yes, you can trace it, but it was designed to be, it's intended to be anonymous and decentralized and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's supposed to be out of state control. And central bank digital currency is the 180-degree opposite of that. It is entire control. Like Juliet said, you can't bury it in your backyard. And you can't just, like, they can literally shut you down. And like Adam said, not only do they have social credit scores in China, we've talked about it before. There's ESG. Now, ESG is this environmental social governance score that is being pushed by the World Economic Forum, but many large corporations are adopting it. As an example, BlackRock. And let's just start with BlackRock because they can be at the top of the chain, right? Because they have so much money under management. If they say, well, for our ESG score to be high, we can only do business with other people with good high ESG scores. That means if you want a loan or you want investment from them or you want some kind of financial transaction with them, they can say, well, what's your ESG stuff? Show me your ESG. And that trickles down all the way to some dude selling donuts at a donut shop who needs the bank to give him a line of credit or needs to buy a machine from so-and-so or needs a payroll company to do blah, blah, blah. And like, they will start asking, well, what's your ESG score? Even there's only, I think I mentioned this the other day, there's 2 major ammunition manufacturers in the United States. Like, most of the ammunition that you buy, it's a bunch of brands, but I think it's Vista Outdoor and Olin are the 2 brands. Most of it, I think, is Vista Outdoor. Go to their website. There's an ESG, like an ammunition company's got like, yeah, we have an ESG score. Why? You'd think if anyone's going to be like, screw this, it's people making ammo, but no, it's not. Everyone is starting to, and the SEC's been talking about trying to push it on publicly traded companies and requiring, I mean, this is one of the, I think the Supreme Court ruling might hamper this, but they've been trying to push this on companies need to start reporting their ESG information. So the idea, like, Adam's not crazy for saying like social credit will come. Like, it's here in companies, and you better believe that it will via osmosis get into the population generally, right? And you combine that with central bank digital currency, and it is it's really over. It's over.
Yeah. I think it was about 2 weeks ago, I just happened to see a commercial, and I think it was Bank of America offers investments through Merrill Lynch. And you can use your like Bank of America app, and it showed like the person smiling because they invested and their personal ESG score went up a little bit. And she's like, ooh. So like it's coming.
Okay, there you go.
Like, it's already apparently available in apps, so you can have your own ESG score based on the companies that you invest in. Like, are you investing in good ones or bad ones?
Right.
Right. Oh my gosh, it's just it feels like it's happening so fast, and it all sounds so crazy. Like, if you try to talk to somebody who's totally blissfully unaware of all of this, they're like, okay, Alex Jones, like, yeah, they're gonna control all our money and not gonna be able to buy a car anymore. But it's real. Like, they're working on it.
Yeah.
Like I always say, it'll be nice to meet all the people in chat in the gulag. So have a good time.
Right. Yeah. Someone says your ESG score will be no different than having a credit score. Yeah. That's true in one sense. I mean, in one sense, the credit score should reflect your ability to pay back. It doesn't always, because there's other ways it can, but like in general, the credit score should be how safe are you to loan to? Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. But ESG, like, if Adam says something wrong on Twitter, that doesn't make him more of a loan risk. But it will. Right? It will.
I'm used to it.
Yeah. Not that you would ever say anything wrong on Twitter.
Why not?
You know, I'm sure.
Shit.
I'm sure.
I'm not trying hard enough.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, we've been going for almost 2 hours, so it's probably a good time to wrap up. Adam, remind people where they can find you, how they can follow your work, all that fun stuff.
You can follow me on Twitter. I'm going to do my fake TikTok. You can follow me on Twitter at wrong_speak.
Is that a thing they do? They do this?
Yeah. They're like, huh? Yeah. If you see me on TikTok.
That was only when you're referring to your pronouns, like.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at wrong_speak. I'm the most active on there. Instagram, same thing. You can also go to wrongspeak.net for articles written by different writers that we now have. We now have an editor. Was it four writers now, 4 paid writers, and potentially more in the near future. So I'm trying to expand Wrong Speak. I'm currently reviewing a book to publish under Wrong Speak as well. If anybody's going to be in the Milwaukee, Madison, Wisconsin area, I'm going to be speaking for Turning Points Faith in Janesville. So have a look out for that. But yeah, I think that's basically it. And one other thing, if you're interested in writing an article for Wrong Speak, feel free to contact me or go to the website and fill out the contact form, and we'll discuss it.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for showing up, and thanks for a great conversation. Juliet, remind people where they can find you.
You can find me right now on Gab, Truthseeker8487.
Awesome.
I got kicked off Twitter, so
yeah. Well, I think that might affect your personal ESG score.
Maybe.
So we can have a conversation about that later. Also, I'll make an announcement now. We'll tell people Juliet's going to be joining me every week from now on as a co-host. So if you like Juliet, you're happy. If you don't, tough shit for you. She's going to be here every week anyway. So
I'll win them over.
Yeah, she will win you over with her charm. So thank you both for joining. I really appreciate it. And we will see you next time. Thanks for sticking around until the end. If you're new to Unsafe Space, check out our deep content library that includes discussions with everyone from James Lindsay to Brett Weinstein. And please consider helping to fund our work by visiting unsafespace.com/donate. You can find us on a variety of social media platforms, and you can find a community of like-minded individuals on our Unsafe Space Discord server, which is open to financial supporters at any level. We hope to see you there.
Warning. This is an unsafe space. Dangerous ideas have been detected. The content of this production is known by the state of California to cause unregulated ideation that may be harmful to bureaucrats. Association with the following individuals or tacos is strictly prohibited. Apropos of nothing, I was just wondering, how would you feel about another pandemic? Your president is in full control of his mental faculties. If you think about it, no one should be allowed to express opinions. But don't. Think about it, I mean. That's not your job. Thinking has been scientifically proven to be less efficient than compliance. Science, scientific, and scientifically are registered trademarks of the World Economic Forum. Unauthorized use is prohibited. Computer voice courtesy. Never mind, that last line is fake news. Please disregard it and return to your safe space immediately. There will be cake.